Hey Money Guy family, it's your host Brian Preston back with another episode of Ask the Money Guy.
That's right, you guys have financial questions, we have the financial answers. Go out to your favorite social, use the hashtag AskTheMoneyGuy, or you can go to our website, moneyguy.com, ask a question right there and we can answer it right here in the Tesla.
It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
So Brian, today is a little unique because it didn't come from a hashtag Ask the Money Guy. It didn't come from the website. This is actually something that came from one of our clients.
That's exactly right.
So this client reached out, and this is what he said. He said, I have a friend who is 7 years older than me and about to retire. Because of the recent downturn, he is now worried that he can no longer afford to retire. What advice would you give him?
We get this client. We get this type of question all the time, and I think it all goes back to the behavioral side of how people are impacted by volatility. But I think that we really need some context and some understanding. So I want to go through three key things. The first thing I would ask, really derailed for somebody who is, if you are right approaching retirement and the volatility of 2018 has derailed your retirement, something has gone horribly wrong with your retirement plan. And let me elaborate.
Sure.
The market is dependent upon, now this question was asked at the end of November. So I think if the day you looked at the market, it depends upon which asset class you're looking at, you're probably down less than 5% for the year. But from intra-year, there was about an 8 to 10% adjustment, but year to date, less than 5%. Right. So if a less than 5% volatility moment is going to derail your retirement, I will tell you, first of all, you've done something wrong.
You might be a little too razor thin.
You have done something wrong in your retirement plan. So that's a key element, is actually having a retirement plan. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second thing, and I think this is the part that amazes me about my day job, Bo. If people just understood some key elements of investing, it would insulate them from a lot of the fear I think they experience on a day-to-day basis with volatility and when that comes. And sometimes it should be celebrated more than it should be feared.
Right.
And it always amazes me how people don't understand that relationship. So let me go educate you with some basics here. Here's the reality of the financial markets. And I'm going to talk in generalities of a very simplified, aggressive portfolio of 90% S&P 500 and like 10% T-bills, three-month T-bills, which are the equivalent of cash.
Yeah.
So if you think about a 90-10 portfolio, if you asked yourself, since 1953 all the way through 2017, if I looked at on a year-over-year basis, was the market positive or negative with this super aggressive portfolio? What do you think the answer is on how often it's positive? And you'd be surprised to find out that it's 78% of the time it is positive when you look at something that, a very simplified, aggressive allocation.
Just
like
on a year-by-year basis, that portfolio is up about 8 out of every 10 years.
8 out of 10 years. So you already hear that the system is already kind of skewed to being up many more years than it is down. And that makes sense if you think about innovation and, because, guys, it is a lot better to be alive today than I think it was 60 years ago. Sure. You think about what we get to enjoy and appreciate. I was trying to explain this to my daughter, is that in the past, if you didn't know, I've looked up how to pronounce words using YouTube. I've looked up, we were trying to figure, I'm trying to think of what Jennifer and I were talking about this weekend, is we were trying to figure out who wrote this Christmas song that we hear every year and want to know the backstory of it. We were able to go on Google and see it. Back in the 80s and 70s, you couldn't do that. You take for granted how information. So I'm telling you, it is a great time to be alive. If you're a young investor, the tools out there are better than they've ever been. So the reality check is that it's awesome to be an investor right now. But understand that you got that basically 80-20 rule, that 8 out of 10 years it's going to be good, but 2, you're going to have to suffer through some bad times. The next thing, 5 years. If you can't keep the money invested for a full 5 years, you need to reevaluate the difference between short-term investing versus long-term investing. And when you're talking about equity investing, the stock market and the S&P 500, things like that, you need to have 5 years in your time horizon. Don't put money you'll need over the next 2 years into the S&P 500. It's not going to go well.
So if you're someone sitting there like, oh, I need to buy a new car next year, what should I invest in now? Or my child is about to get married in the next 18 months, where should I put that money until then? The answer is cash.
Yeah.
You have to be able to walk away from it so that you give the market long enough to do what the market does.
So, and that leads to the third thing you need to understand on basic core understandings of investing is diversification. Because you've heard me say that, 78% of the time it's good since 1953 to 2017. But for a lot of you, you're like, well, wait a minute, that's not good. Because if you expand that out, take the same aggressive portfolio to 3 years, the number gets pushed up to, I believe, 87%. Right. And then if you look at it from a 5 years, it's about 90%. But a lot of you guys that are quickly approaching retirement, like this client's friend, that's not good enough. 90% sounds awesome, 9 out of 10 years, but what if you're in that 10 years that you need to retire? The answer is diversification. Right. This is why your financial advisor, or why you yourself need to take advantage of spreading your money out between risky assets as well as conservative assets, is because if you just do a moderate level of diversification, and I'm not saying this is what you should do, I'm just giving you the illustrative point. A simple 70-30 portfolio, meaning 70% like in the S&P 500, 30% somewhat conservative between bonds and cash. If you look at it from a 5-year historical average from 1953 to 2017, there hasn't been a 5-year period that it's been negative. So that, now there is a period if you're super aggressive like in the S&P 500, that it would be negative still even after staying invested for a full 5 years, but that's why diversification is going to bridge that period of time for you.
It's wonderful. We actually get to see this in practice. This past month, we had a number of clients who are retired, and they would call us and they'd say, hey guys, what's going on with the market? It's wonderful. We could say, well, okay, this is what's going on with the market. We'll sort of tell you, now let's talk about what's going on with your portfolio.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're amazed to hear that just because the market was down 3 or 4% or has an intra-year pull down of 8%, because of diversification, that doesn't mean that's what their portfolio is doing.
So I want to kind of close this thing out to talk about, with these basic understandings, that the market is primarily going up because of the march of innovation. How are so many people failures? Because you see all these stats about people that don't have money in the bank. You see so many stats about the ongoing catastrophic thing that's going to happen with all the graying of the nation. Why is this the case with a system that is wired for success?
Right.
And here's the answer. It's 2 simple things. It's the behavior gap. A lot of people just are horrible. That whole relationship between fear, meaning that when the market's making money, I want to make as much as I possibly can, and greed, and if the fear, well, I might have gotten that backwards. Fear and greed. Greed is when the market's up, you thinking I want to make even more, so you go way more aggressive than you should, and then that relationship with fear is when you hit volatile periods like we've had in a small portion of 2018.
You start running for the exits.
People are like, I got to get the heck out of this thing. I can't handle this. So that fear and greed causes people to break the cycle of success and actually make good decisions with their financial investments. And then the second thing is this whole concept of deferred gratification. Let's face it, deferred gratification is just not cool in the United States. People would rather have today instead of investing a little bit for tomorrow. And that's why I always tell people, and this is the thing I say, we have support groups for all things. If you have trouble with what you eat, you can go find a support group. If you have control issues with substance items, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you can go find somebody that you can have a support case. If you have things with just behavioral stuff, you can find a support group. You know where you can't find a support group? People that are addicted to saving money.
That's right.
And the reason is because they become empire builders. And that's why so much time is spent on us talking about your behavior, of controlling that fear and greed, but second, the behavior of saving for the future. If you can just defer a little bit, it will go a long way. That's why we're always talking about the concept of 88 times over for those 20-year-olds, that they could really save. $1 turns into 88 by the time they retire. Even if you're 40, even if you're 50, you too can take advantage of that multiplying effect. You just have to let your money do the work for you, so you're not working for yourself always with your hands, your backs, and your brain. Let that army of dollar bills do the work for you. That's what we're pushing for. So bringing it back to this client, asking the question for a friend of, man, I am getting close to retirement. How do I make sure that this recent volatility hasn't derailed me? go through these steps of making sure you have diversification, different asset allocation, assets that are meant to do different things. They're not always all doing great things, meaning that they might even lose a little bit of money, but they will jump into action when their time comes.
That's exactly right.
So, Bo, you're the CFA. Anything else that we kind of left out of this when you think about behavioral as well as investment, about making sure that your retirement is good?
Yeah, I think it's really important that whenever you do start thinking about your portfolio, whether you're somebody in your 20s or somebody in your 50s, you need to get the risk right on the front end.
That's exactly right.
It's really been hard. We've been in a bull market here for the last almost 10 years. It's been really hard since we've just now started to see volatility creep back in. People are kind of remembering, this thing doesn't always go in one direction. It doesn't always feel like a steady walk up the mountain.
That is a great point.
So if you are somebody who's feeling nervous or getting really uncomfortable or thinking about making a bad decision, this might be a perfect time to reassess where your true risk tolerance is and what you can handle. The biggest key to someone who's 7 years away from retirement and thinks that volatility might be derailing that retirement, I would encourage you to go back to your retirement plan and see if it was really as bored up as it needed to be.
Hey, and consider taking the relationship to the next level. We work with clients all across the country. We come up with this abundance cycle where we give you free advice. We love on you. The only thing we ask is when it's time to pay us back and you get to the point you need somebody to look over your shoulder and give you some thoughts on how well things are going, reach out to us. You can go to aboundwealth.com or moneyguy.com and just go to our Contact Us page. We will definitely see if we can help you out on making sure you measure twice, cut once, and get that retirement plan right. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hanson.